All right, all right, all right. Here we are, another show, Pilla Tax Academy show, where you're getting the most premier tax information available in the country. That's our opinion, and we're going to stick to it. I've got Mr. Dan Pilla with us again, pouring out just monstrous information. You guys, make sure you got the Clubhouse app because Dan and I did a Clubhouse last week, and there was some of the highest level tax professionals in there, and they are begging for Dan to come on different shows, different podcasts. As a matter of fact, we got him lined up for the Ken Walls Breaking Through podcast coming up very soon. That goes out to all the major platforms. But tonight we've got a big time subject. Don't miss out on important deductions for 2020. So Dan, let's get these things set up because you know what? I think now is the time for people to get their ducks in a row. What do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely, Jay. No question about it. It's a huge problem for folks getting together the information they need, not just to prepare their tax return, Jay, but to survive an audit if it comes to that. People, listen, you have to assume that when you file a tax return, especially if you're a small business, you have to assume that the IRS is going to look at that return. Now, maybe it's not going to be a full-scale knock-down, drag-them-out audit where they look at every single piece of paper and go through every line of your tax return, although that happens plenty of times. Generally speaking, they pick on, one or two or three items on the tax return, and you don't necessarily know which ones they are, although I can certainly give you some tips as to what to expect. We'll talk about some of that tonight for sure. But the fact of the matter is you got to assume they're going to look at this stuff, Jay, and you can't file a tax return that you're not prepared up. One of the most important things that people need to understand is that the burden of proof is on you when it comes to defending your tax return. The IRS never has to prove you did it wrong, Jay. Very, very rarely do they ever have to prove anything in the context of a civil tax audit situation. You always have to prove you did it right. And so people tell me all the time, well, Dan, I don't have to worry about the IRS. I'm honest. I don't cheat on my taxes. Well, that's great. You're supposed to be honest and you shouldn't cheat on your taxes. That's, those are two pretty simple things. But the fact of the matter is it's not good enough to just be honest, Jay. You have to prove that you're honest. You have to prove that you did it right. And if you can't prove that, doesn't mean you're going to jail. But what it does mean is that they're going to disallow your deductions. They're going to jack up your tax liability. They're going to add penalties and interest, and they're going to expect you to pay the bill.
Wow. I've got some notes here, and I want everyone to pay attention to the notes because it leads up to some great questions. If you've got any questions, please type in your questions. Send those over where Dan can address those. And we want to make sure that 2/3 of all problems, man, we got 2/3. 2/3 of all problems small business owners have with audits are caused by the lack of proper record keeping. And the most expensive record keeping mistake small businesses make is with their business mileage deductions. Keep hearing that over and over. Despite its high value for small businesses, they often fail to collect the proper proof to support the deduction. Don't make this mistake is what Dan is going to tell you more than likely, and I'm going to tell you the same thing. Now's the best time to act. Now, what is the best way to claim vehicle expenses, Dan?
Well, there's two ways to claim vehicle expenses, Jay. First of all, let's back up to a statement you made to stripe the field here, and that is 2/3 of all businesses that have problems with the IRS, those problems are records related. So it's not a situation where somebody's cheating on their taxes, Jay. It's not a situation where they're taking exotic deductions that don't exist. It's not a situation where they're criminals. That's not what goes on for the vast majority of people. As you said, 2/3 of all the problems that small businesses have is record keeping. All right. So it's not a matter that they didn't incur the expenses they say they incurred. It's a matter of they don't have the records to prove it. All right. And so the IRS doesn't just take your word for the fact that you had business expenses, even though, and I've heard clients tell me this 1,000 times, well, Dan, I'm in business. They must know I had expenses. And the answer is, well, of course they know you had expenses, but they don't have to give you the benefit of a nickel's worth of expenses that you can't prove. All right. So that's the key. You got to have the proper record keeping. When it comes to small businesses, for small business folks, generally speaking, their automobile is a huge source of business deductions, but it's also probably the leading leading source of mistakes that people make with respect to recording their mileage. You only get a deduction for your vehicle if you can prove that the vehicle was used for business. All right, so there's two ways to do it. In answer to your question, there's two ways to do it. You can either use the standard mileage allowance, where the IRS will give you, 50 or 55 cents a mile. I don't know what the number is for 2021 now, but it's approximately 55 cents a mile that you get as a deduction for the business use of your car. That's the standard mileage rate. The other method is to use your actual expenses, where you include your gas and your vehicle licensing, insurance, and repairs and maintenance, and of course a portion of the payment is reflected through depreciation. That's the actual expenses. But both deductions, Jay, are entirely dependent on proving how many miles you drove for business. And if you can't prove how many miles you drove for business, I don't care how many gas receipts you have. I don't care how many receipts for repairs and maintenance you come up with. Doesn't matter how many, that you prove that you paid the car payment all these months or years. None of that matters. You have to prove the business use of the car. You've got to be able to demonstrate that out of, just for example, let's say you drove 15,000 miles over the course of the year, and you're claiming half of that for business. You got to prove that you drove 7,500 miles for business. That is essential. And this is a key mistake that small businesses make.
This is important right here. The simple things, paying attention to details, going to get you a whole bunch of advantage. Now, what other records do folks need to keep as far as their mileage or their vehicle expenses, Dan?
Yeah, the most important thing, Jay, is a vehicle or a business mileage log. So I alluded to this a minute ago, where I said, if you drive 15,000 miles over the course of the year, the IRS is going to assume that all 15,000 of those miles were personal miles, not business. Going to the grocery store, going to the park, going to pick up the kids at school, right? They will assume that, because the burden of proof is on the taxpayer to show what your business mileage is. So you got to keep a mileage log. And the regulations require that mileage log be contemporaneous. All right. Now, what that means is that you're recording the mileage at or about the time that the actual trip was taken. All right. So the best thing to do is record your mileage every day. The second best thing is to record it on a weekly basis. There are certain circumstances in which you can use a snapshot of your business travel. Let's say, for example, that your business travel is the same week in and week out, because let's say you've just got a job as a whatever your job might be, is to go around and, let's say, service office equipment, and you've got a route that you drive around to service office equipment, and you drive that same route every single week, week after week after week. In that situation, you can use a snapshot. You don't necessarily need a mileage log for every single month. If 3 months of business travel is representative of your entire year, you can use a 3-month log. But a lot of businesses don't have that, Jay. A lot of businesses, like you, for example, like me, your business travel is different week to week, certainly different month to month. All right. So in that situation, you have to keep a mileage log. So we need starting mileage, we need ending mileage, and then you've got to be able to describe the business purpose of the travel. All right. So in my small business mastery course, Jay, I have written examples in there, including charts, actual flow charts that can show you exactly what constitutes deductible business mileage. And I give you written examples of how this works, including specific examples of the mileage log. Now, there's all kinds of tools that are available on the internet, apps on your phone and so forth, that you can use to track the mileage. But Jay, the fact is, you got to track the mileage. That's the biggest mistake that people make, is not having the mileage log. Now, once you got the mileage log, you can use, if you opt to use the standard business rate, you don't need any other records. The mileage log is all you need. For most people, however, the actual expenses is more valuable than the standard. So if you're going to claim your actual expenses in addition to the mileage log, you got to have your receipts for gas, your vehicle registration, inspections, if that's required by your state. Whatever expenses you incur to maintain that vehicle come into play for purposes of figuring the deduction, including a percentage of the vehicle's cost that's taken in the form of depreciation. So all of those additional records would be needed, Jay, to prove the actual vehicle expense versus the standard. Remember, the standard is easier to use because all you need is the mileage log, but it's less valuable. The other method of actual mileage expenses is more work in terms of keeping the records, but it's more valuable in the bottom line because it almost always gets you a bigger deduction.
Check out these questions coming in here. We got one here from Tyler. It says, how do we know what all to keep up with? Is that listed somewhere on the IRS site? Where can we find reliable information? He's wanting to know, Dave.
Well, you can pour through the IRS's website and find this stuff. There's no question about that. You can pour through their publications and so on. The IRS has got hundreds and hundreds of publications that explain this stuff. But here's the problem with the IRS's publications, and they make no bones about this, Jay. When they publish an explanation to the public about how this works or how that works, you're going to see on the front side of that publication a disclaimer where the IRS says in their publication that this is their opinion of what the law is. It's not necessarily what the courts say the law is. All right. So they're giving you their view of it. And of course, they're going to color this in their own best interest. All right. So the best place to get information about this is through the Dan Pilla Small Business Tax Mastery course, because I've got all this information in there, Jay, that takes you step by step through the process very clearly, very simply, understandable fashion. When it comes to the mileage log, for example, or the mileage question in general, I give you, as I already said, graphic examples, step-by-step examples of how to do this and how to maximize the deduction.
All right, now, pay close attention to this because this is important. This question. Dion asks, do you teach other classes? How often can I hear you more often? That's what Pilla Tax Academy is all around.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Dion. That's what the Pilla Tax Academy is all about. We do a number. First of all, over at the Pilla Tax Academy website, we got 3 packages over there right now. We got the Small Business Mastery Tax course, and that's specifically for small business owners. We've got the Taxpayers' Rights Mastery course, and that's for Jane and Joe taxpayer, not necessarily a small business, not a tax professional. This course is for folks that need to know at a very basic level how to interact with the IRS, dealing with computer notices, dealing with penalties, interest assessments, these kinds of things that Jane and Joe America need to know. And then we've got our tax professionals program that's available over there as well. And what's up there right now is our 2020 Taxpayers Defense Conference, where we bring tax professionals from around the country into this program. We do it in Las Vegas. Actually, this year we did 2 things because of COVID. We did it live in Las Vegas, and then we live streamed it. Jay's team produced a very professional, top quality, top notch video presentation of this program. And that's available over there at Pilla Tax Academy as well. We're going to be adding to the Pilla Tax Academy as we go all kinds of additional information for tax pros and for members of the public. So an ongoing thing is going to be will be to go to Pilla Tax Academy to get these additional resources.
You know, speaking of that, the vault is coming up. So Dan Pilla has a vault. So all these past courses he's done, all types of audio trainings that are available, they are now being edited and starting to be loaded onto the Pilla Tax Academy. That's why you got to get some of the free information over there, get on the mailing list, get on the update list, grab some of the master classes, and get tax literate. That's what I call tax literate. I mean, it's time for folks to stop. I was guilty. And Dan deals with this every day. He had to deal with me on this. I put my hand down in the sand, and then you got to come to Dan, and he's the ER going, help me. We don't want people to have to come to Dan like that. He can help save you a lot of pain, trust me, if you just pay attention and learn. And not talking about costing you the whole house to learn this stuff. We're talking about, just several hundreds of bucks, and you can literally give yourself a high-level education and become tax literate. Dan.
Yeah, Jay, let me step on you for just a second, Jay. You mentioned the word ER, emergency room, the phrase ER.
Yeah.
I consider myself the tax equivalent of an ER trauma surgeon. Right? People don't come to me for tax planning and tax reduction strategies. They come to me after the car has crashed into the tree and they're bleeding from the ears financially as a result of this disaster. And so my job is to get them patched up and get them off of life support and stop the bleeding and get them back on their feet, get them back in the system properly, get them current with their taxes going forward, so they get the problem behind them, and then we teach them how to stay out of trouble. Well, there isn't anybody, Jay, that wants to crash their tax car into a tree, right? Nobody wants to crash into a tree. You want to stay on the road. You want to stay out of the ditches. And this is why these mastery courses are so important. I've been litigating with the IRS for over 40 years, 42, 43 years. I've been fighting with the IRS. I've helped thousands of small businesses solve every kind of tax problem you can imagine. I've worked with thousands of individuals across the country in every kind of tax case you can imagine. Don't wait until the car is crashed into a tree to get the kind of help you need to stay out of trouble. This is what you want to do, is stay out of trouble. The problem, Jay, I touched on this a few minutes ago, is people just don't think it's going to happen to them. It's like anything else. They say to me, Dan, I'm honest. I don't have to worry about the IRS. And as I said, God bless you. You're supposed to be honest. You should be honest. You should not cheat on your tax return or make up deduct. You shouldn't do any of that stuff. We all know that. But again, the burden of proof is on you. How can you prove you're honest when you don't even know what the standards are that you have to prove? This is the one, I think this is probably the single most critical thing that we teach in the small business mastery course, tax mastery course, and that I teach at professional seminars for attorneys, accountants, enrolled agents, is how to carry this burden of proof, Jay, because even tax professionals know that the taxpayer's got the burden of proof, that they have to, keep the records and so on. Every tax pro knows that. But the question is how to carry the burden of proof. This is what I demonstrate to you very clearly, very succinctly, based on decades of litigating with the IRS, is where I bring this information to bear.
It's awesome. Dan, last question here. What if a person, they just mess it up and they didn't keep a mileage log? I bet you get this all the time.
Oh, it happens all the time
now.
Yeah, it happens all the time. No question about it. And in fact, Jay, people need to understand, and this is not only true of mileage records, it's really true across the board. If you've lost your records, it doesn't necessarily mean you've lost your deductions, all right? Because you have the right to reconstruct lost records. And when we're talking about a mileage log, this is what I tell my clients, because almost every time they just don't have the right mileage log to prove their deductions, right? They know they traveled. You deal with a construction worker, for example, a guy, a roofing contractor, let's say, and he put new roofs on 100 houses in 2020. Well, he didn't do that from his backyard. Right? He had to go to the job site to do all these jobs. He had to go to the supply store. He had to go to the hardware store. He had to go to the bank. He had to do all this driving in order to make that happen. A real estate agent's another perfect example. If you're a real estate agent and you sold 20 houses last year, you probably showed 400 or 500 houses to your customers to be able to sell 20. I don't know what the ratio is, but it's huge. And all of that is done. Most of that is done driving around. Now, some of it's done virtually these days. We know that. But the fact of the matter is these people are traveling all the time. And so in that kind of a situation, Jay, you've got the right to reconstruct the records. I talk about this extensively as reconstructing records. And when we're talking about a mileage log, it's easier today than it's ever been in the history of my interaction with the IRS to reconstruct a mileage log, because we got such a thing as Google Maps out there right now. So if you know, Jay.
Wow, big tip.
Yeah. So let's take the roofing contractor just as an example. The roofing contractor knows that he put new roofs on 50 houses. Well, he obviously knows where the houses are because he's got that in his records. So now he can just go to Google Maps, figure out what the mileage is. He can say, well, I know I drove to the house at least 3 times. So we got 3 trips there and back. There's the mileage for that. He had to go to the bank twice a month. He had to go to the supply house 4 times a week. You can, when you have this foundation of knowledge based on what you know you did, you can use that to reconstruct the mileage log. And a reconstructed mileage log is valid, Jay. It's 100% valid as long as you got some evidence to base it on. So in the course of in the case of the roofing contractor, well, he knows he built 50 houses. We got invoices here for 50 house jobs, right? We know he did that. And so he can use that information to reconstruct this mileage log. And when you do that, guess what? You resurrect your deductions that are otherwise are going to be buried in the grave.
This is great information. Everybody make sure you put in a special thank you to Dan for sharing this information. Again, we do this show free every single week. We show up, we give you free information. But of course, the goal is to have you eventually become a part of the Pilla Tax Academy, which we're coming up with some very special things there. There's 3 master classes there now, 3 master unbelievable courses for 3 different people, for tax professionals, for small business owners, and also the everyday taxpayer. Everybody needs to go check out Pilla Tax Academy. There's free reports on the front page. Also, make sure to follow us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Pilla Tax Academy. You can also find us on Instagram, Pilla Tax Academy. Dan, by the way, what's going on with the Instagram is unbelievable. You guys and the Facebook, there are posts with free content of Dan's information coming out every day. So we're doing posts every day with free tips, free information. You got to go follow us on Instagram at Pilla Tax Academy. You got to follow us on Facebook. Also, make sure to check out the YouTube channel. You go over to PillaTube, PILLA. We even call, we say, hey, YouTube, hey, we love you, YouTube, but we got to have PillaTube as well because people need to know what's going on with taxes. Dan, here's what I like to do. Maybe take 2 or 3 minutes and just give us a tax jam session. What's on your heart that we can finish this show up with that will give some folks some real value?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll speak to small businesses for just a second here, Jay. You know, there have been so many tax law changes during 2020 that affect small businesses. This PPP loan program, of course, is one of them. And with the Consolidated Appropriations Act that was signed by former President Trump, probably the last act that he performed as president insofar as legislation is concerned, was certainly the last bill that he signed into law, no question about that. That provided a second round of PPP loans to individuals or to small businesses, I should say. All right. So whether you're a corporation or not, you can get this PPP loan. And there's a second round of it. It's called the Second Draw Loan Program. And people need to know about that, Jay. And I don't think a lot of people do know about that. And that's something that we talk about in my newsletter, Pilla Talks Taxes. When you become a purchaser of one of our tax mastery courses, whether it's the professional one or the small business one or the individual one, the 3 that you mentioned, you get a subscription to the Pilla Talks Taxes newsletter. Comes out 10 times a year. All right. It's 15 or 20 pages of information. It's got 5 or 6 different articles in it that affect small businesses or individuals. The other thing I do in this newsletter, Jay, is I keep you up to date on what's going on in Washington. All right. So now with the new administration, we absolutely know that there are going to be massive tax law changes coming down the pike. What we don't know right now as we sit here is exactly what those are going to look like. But that's another thing that I keep you up to date on. These important developments in Washington that affect your pocketbook. The other thing I talk about in this newsletter is developments in the case law, right? I watch the tax court on a regular basis, and we've got articles in the newsletter about tax court cases that affect your rights as a taxpayer. Things you need to know to make sure that you're dealing on a level playing field with the IRS. There isn't any other place to get this kind of digestive information, Jay. I mean, it's out there. You can find it. But if you're willing to spend all day, every day, combing through thousands of pages of laws and regulations and court decisions and IRS publications, God bless you, knock yourself out. It's all out there. But this is what I do for folks that subscribe to our programs, is I give you the ammunition you need to keep this a level playing field when you're dealing with the IRS.
You know, there's what's called legacy members of the Pilla Tax Academy. Everything's going to blow up. I'm telling you. If you get over on Clubhouse, it's another place. Get over on Clubhouse. Go find the Get Right Club. Get Right Club, because Dan comes on typically once a week. We're going to go on there sometime this week. And I'm telling you, There are high-level, major influencers and professionals over there, and they are freaking out. So you can follow myself, Jay Noland, Jaynoland, and Dan Pilla, DanPilla, on the Clubhouse too, and get all kinds of great information. It's been a great show. It's helped a lot of people. Would y'all do me a favor? Put a special thank you in there for Dan. Just say thank you, appreciate the information, show him some love. Share this with a couple of people that you know have to pay taxes. All right, so you already know you can just keep hitting the share button over and over. Dan, we appreciate having you here. Thank you to all of our incredible guests and audience that are out there watching this. This is only going to get bigger because we're going to help a lot of people. Thank you, Dan. Everyone have a great evening. Bye-bye.
My pleasure.